Hey everybody, today I am going to be reviewing Warfare. This was directed by Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza. I've reviewed a lot of Alex Garland films on this channel, so you know that as an artist he's somebody that always intrigues me, but he also frustrates me in the same breath. But Warfare to me seemed like it was capitalizing on the more stripped down marketability of a film like Civil War, which came out last year. It became quite a talking point among audiences at the time of its release. Though for me, I struggled with it. If you saw my review for it, there were a lot of things I admired within it. I don't know, I feel like it couldn't marry more the skeletal, ambiguous nature of things with the more heavy socio-political commentary, the moral questions that it's posing. It tries to tackle more thematically than I think the minimalist approach to that movie can allow for, because you have like the photojournalist angle, and then you have like the loaded title of Civil War, and then you have the more pulpy attitude that's kind of fetishizing the violence mixed with like the art house and the more meditative aspects, but little of it, again, was coming together. It felt blotchy and muddled and just unsatisfying. The best aspects of that movie to me are when they hone in on something specific within the bigger conflict, maybe like one set piece, and it's like we're almost removing the full context of everything, maybe a simple objective, and then just expand on it. To me, it's like Garland, it's like he was listening to the criticisms of Civil War intently, and like he reflected on it, addressed it, and then he comes back with a much more focused film. To me, Warfare is everything that Civil War should have been. Alex Garland has a love of the poetic image, the image speaking maybe louder than the characters can, and he's a big Tarkovsky fan, as an example. And when you look at Civil War, to me, I think that film owes a lot to Ellen Klimov's Come and See. But I look at Warfare, and in a lot of ways, I feel like that one is even closer to Come and See. It's bolder, it's more abrasive, it's more relentless, and it's simple in a similar way. A microscopic conflict that we can expand and make into a movie that has, basically a 90-minute runtime. We don't have any grand story arcs or like complex moral dilemmas or even any major political statements here. This is a meditation on war, just the specific human experience of it. It helps hugely, I think, that Garland was accompanied in this film by Ray Mendoza, who, he co-directed the film and co-wrote it. He is a former U.S. Navy SEAL in his own right. And, Ellen Klimov, when he made Come and See, it's meant to be about his internal experiences with war himself. And I'm not saying you have to have gone through the experience of war to make a movie about it, but I think Garland was wanting to take it to the next level, the next visceral level, and maybe find more honesty within the artistic interpretation. Having somebody who has been there on the front lines, it can completely change the emotional angle, I think, of the film. And in this case, I think it ramped up everything. It ramped up the tension, the realism, the quality of the editing. Everything, I think, worked. And the point of this film is not to orient you within the environment, to capture the authenticity of place. It's more the sensory experience of those in combat. It's their internal world that we're painting here. The film makes the distinction that this movie is a collection of memories, flashes or impressions that I'm sure feel like some sort of like internal bleeding within the brain or something, but it's bringing it to life for us in the best way they know how, respectfully, I would say. It's all about the immediacy, about the human textures, and all the characters in this movie, all of their feelings, the energy, it's all kinetically linked through this entire conflict. To me, it was the contrast of everything that feels haunting. It's like you have the stillness and then followed by, major viscera. The contrast between like the dirt and the blood and the sweat coating all of the skin and all of this, screaming and anguish. And then suddenly it's like this blanket of smoke, of fog. It's almost void-like. And the movie makes a conscious choice, like I said, to not have a visible protagonist. We have strong actors across the board here, recognizable faces, but maybe not household names. These are actors that you've seen maybe in, your favorite TV shows or, as supporting players in some of your favorite movies. You remember them and you can attach a different emotional tone to each one. They establish the slow burn very well, I would say, in the first 30 minutes of the movie, where you're experiencing, the monotony of waiting around, but also the camaraderie and just, normal human interactions. I just think it's important that it subtly is orienting you within the place, and it's establishing its objectives very clearly. And so you just marinate in it and let the intensity build. You don't have to be, overwhelmed or confused yourself unless they're wanting to put you in that headspace. The camera is still or very controlled for a lot of the movie, and then at other times, it can be a little bit shaky, but it never overutilizes that shaky cam like they do so often. It relies on a formalism here that to me just gives more depth to the images, and it creates just a whole picture. And they made the choice to not do a musical score here, and I thought that was a genius decision. So yes, they're relying heavily on the sound effects, but fortunately here the sound effects are pretty fantastic. The seamless transitions from the internal world back into, the immediacy of the moment. It's like you can feel overwhelmed and like lost in the sounds of like voices on the headphones and like the heavy breathing, and then boom, it jolts you right back into the room where everybody's screaming and you've got to get it together. I love the way they also use the muffled sound and the delay of everything registering in, I call it the shell shock section. To me, it was one of the best sections of the film. Weirdly, even though it's still very intense, it kind of breaks up the monotony of what we had seen before. And like I said, the sounds in this movie, they tell a story. And so do the images, the senses, they're all threaded together. And within that, you can form your own ideas about it. Like I said at the beginning, there's a weird lack of texture to the worlds, but there's a lot of texture to like the immediate experience. As an example, this movie is clearly not filmed in the Middle East, and weirdly that somehow contributes to the mood of it. When I think about this movie, the colors I think about are like, camouflage or like earthy tones, beigey tones, but then they're sliced with these bold reds where it's like, the sun is coming through the red curtains. It's very effective. And that color is going to be like echoed through all of the pools of blood and body parts that we're going to see later on. And there's something that is stark and bold about that minimalism. It kind of reminds me of the Japanese aesthetic. I think of a movie like Ran. I know I bring that up a lot, directed by Kurosawa. Just the color blocking in that film, the simple, bold colors that tell a story, tell us which sides we're on, and it's great. It breaks up the monotony of the darkness. And I mean that visually, and there's a potency to it emotionally. So yeah, I think the instincts for warfare are, for the most part, they're pretty spot on. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but I was worried about how they would end this movie. I was worried it would become maybe too pointed politically or morally, which would ruin kind of the experience of the film to me to a degree. But no, I think the ending was pretty fantastic. Leaving it to the silence of the moment so you can contemplate afterwards, to me, that is mature storytelling and knowing what your film is about. This was a pleasant surprise and a winner for me. This is, again, the only other film that Alex Garland has made, maybe with the exception of Ex Machina, that I've seen that feels like a cohesive piece. I've said this before, but I love it when a director looks at himself, looks at his work, and is able to maybe address his own limitations as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, and finds a way to capitalize on his strengths. No fat to trim here, no weird air pockets. This is lean storytelling, it's tense filmmaking. It's hard not to be invested fully throughout, at least in my opinion. Yes, I recommend this movie. I think you should see this on the biggest screen you can, preferably IMAX if you can. That does feel like the proper setting. But yes, that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commission portraits and I sell prints of my work. If that's something you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are great. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Welcome to all the new members. If you're interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch my videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.